Greetings, programmers, and welcome to Busted Thumb's second installment on creating the game of memory inside of Scratch. And once again, I am joined by my amazing and humble assistant, Fluffy Wishes. Say hello.
Hello!
And we're going to make this memory game for you. Just to recap from our last one, this is where we got to. What you see on your screen is that we put together a bit of the title screen, and it has a place for the users to select small, medium, or large for their game board as they go out. And really, we had just created the buttons and introduced memory. As you can see, they're showing up. There's just one sprite representing all three of those things, but they're ready for us to hook up and move to the next screen. Before we do that, let's make this screen look a little bit better. Let's go back to our stage. I think the background probably ought to look a little bit nicer than what it does right now, don't you think?
Mm-hmm.
So let's go ahead and get rid of all this stuff here. We don't need those anymore because we can see exactly what our buttons are going to look like.
Much
think
nicer.
What we could use is a backdrop that looks kind of nice in the background. What kind of backdrop should we put in this guy?
I think we should have something like that doesn't. It kind of complements
The game?
the game.
Okay, like what?
Well, that depends on what kind of style do we want the game to be. Do we want it to be nice and peaceful? Do we want it to be very
I think it's
exciting?
Gotta be friendly to all sorts of players. Remember, this is a game that you play when you're really, really young, right?
All right. How about those flowers?
You like flowers? Let's go ahead and go with flowers, and we'll see how that goes. So we click on the flowers and put them in there. Oh, it actually kind of looks nice with the orange on it, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Now, what we do need to do is remember in our title screen we had that thing that said memory at the very top of it. So we're going to have to put that text in, and we're probably going to say also another piece of text that says, you know, press a button to begin or something like that.
All right.
Choose a size to begin, something like that.
We should make our text white so it shows up against the dark background.
Okay. The way we do that is to change that black to white. And do you still like that Scratch font, or do you want to use something else?
I think we should have the font match with the font on the buttons.
Okay,
so
then
yeah.
Scratch script. Okay, then we'll do that. So let's see how white looks. We'll put in memory here. Obviously that's too small, but remember. Got to convert to vector first. Now, let's put in our text.
Hello.
Oh,
there we go.
There it goes. It was a little slow converting over.
You have to wait for it because you pressed all those buttons. It's got to load.
Interesting. There we go. See, I really confused it. So let's go ahead and get rid of all of that. While it was being a little slow, I confused it. There we go. Memory. I think it's having trouble with these fancy flowers. It's getting very distracted by the flowers.
They are some pretty flowers.
All right. So let's make that bigger. Think you can read that pretty well?
Yeah.
It looks all right on the flowers?
Mm-hmm.
All right. And we're going to need a little bit of text that says choose. And boy, it's being really slow when it does. Oh, I see. It wants to save the changes. Choose. Wow, really slow. See, this is what happens when you pick pretty flowers. Choose a board size to begin. I think what we're going to have to do is move that up into the darker area.
Yeah, because that bright flower is too close of a hue to the
Yeah, because you can't really read the choose part. Oh, and we should spell begin right. It was hard for me to tell that I'd spelled it wrong. It took so long for it to show up.
Scratch, stop looking at the flowers and do your job.
Yeah, there we go. You had one job to do, Scratch, and that was to show our text. Choose a board size to begin. You think that shows up? Choose a board size to begin.
Beautiful.
Both don't look entirely centered. What is that? Oh, I see.
Ah,
There we go. Let's try and move that so it looks a little bit more lined up with our buttons there. There we go. I think that looks pretty good, don't you?
Mm-hmm.
I do think that looks pretty good. That's our new title screen. So let's go ahead and move that guy up to the top. We can get rid of this one. And this is now our title screen. I like it. It's very pretty. Well, this is what we're going to see right away. And let's make sure that that is the case always. When we lay out the title screen, so we need to respond to that event. Lay out the title screen, we need to make sure that the backdrop is always switched to the title screen. So that we'll know that that's there, and we'll know that our buttons are there. You know what? We don't know our buttons are there. Because with Scratch, you can always show and hide something. So later on, if we hide those buttons, they won't show up if we lay them out, right? So we missed something. We need to go back into the script here and say when we're going to lay ourselves out, then we need to make sure we've shown ourselves like that.
all right.
Yeah. And really create clone of myself. This really ought to be over here. That's just to set our data up. This is really to set the way we look up. So let's make sure all that stuff goes here and our data stays in there. Initialize data should just have data.
All right.
I think this will do the same thing. Let's go ahead and give it a shot. If it's running, there it is at the large size. Everything looks fine, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Looks pretty good. All right. So now we need the logic. When you click on one of those buttons, it needs to take us to our next screen. What did we call that stage?
We
The
called
game
that
board,
our
right?
game board.
And certainly, in order to know when our buttons get clicked, that's pretty simple. That is when this sprite is clicked, right? So when this sprite is clicked, what we need to do is we need to set the number of rows and columns we want the game board to appear on, and then we need to broadcast a message that says show the game board. Okay, so that's pretty easy for us to do. What we do is we need to set two things. We need to set the number of rows and the number of columns to the value that we have for this particular, which is columns to select and rows to select. Right? Those are the things we were keeping track of with each size of the button.
All right.
Once we've done that, we need to broadcast another message. We need to say that it's time to start the game. So I think what we're going to want to do is initialize data for new game. Okay, and then we want to broadcast a different layout, which is to lay out the game board. And the only things we can really do right now, we can add some new data, of course. We're going to need to keep track of the player score, aren't we?
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to need a variable that's going to be kept track of not just for any one sprite, but for the entire game, which is the player 1 score. And what's the other variable?
Player 2 score.
Of course, player 2 score. And we did say in our thing that we were going to show those guys at the top, right? And there's ways to make this a little bit nicer looking.
I had no idea you could do that.
Yeah, you can actually make them go away like that. See that? You can make them look like that.
There.
And that's what I actually want, because I think we'll put our own little thing above them that says what those variables are. Okay?
Okay.
And we got a problem now, though. They're showing up. They're going to show up sometimes, but they don't look very good on our title screen. I believe they don't look very good on our title screen, which means that a part of when we lay out our title screen is we really ought to hide those variables. So we need to hide both of them, player 1 score and player 2 score. And now if we hit play, they're going to go away. Now, however, we do want them to show up on the next screen, right? So now we're going to have to, over here in our stage, we're going to have to handle another event. We're going to have to handle having it when I receive layout game board, right? What are the things we're going to need to do when we lay out the game board?
We're going to have to show our player's score.
Yeah, we do need to do that, certainly. So let's make sure we show both of those things. Player 1 score and player 2 score. And what about the backdrop?
We'll need to switch the backdrop.
That's right. We need to switch the backdrop to our game board, right? Now what else?
We're going to have to show our tiles, but we don't have any.
We don't have any tiles yet, but there is one thing we can do.
We can...
It has to do with these buttons. We don't want them showing up.
Oh yeah, we have to hide the buttons.
Right. So over here, since these guys take care of their own visibility of whether they're showing or hiding, we're going to have to handle when we receive layout the game board. And what we simply have to do is hide. So let's see what happens when we do all of this. We're going to, I think it's all kind of set up. Let's save it, make sure it's all good. Let's go ahead and make this bigger and click play. And look, it's exactly what we expected, but I would think now that when we click on something, we should get the game board. And yes, we do. It switches the game board over. So now we're at the point where we need to actually fill in some of this data and not show just this backdrop. And that means we need to start working on our tiles. And our tiles are going to be certainly sprites, new sprites for us to work with. So let's create a new sprite. And I think we're going to create some new sprites that, first of all, we need to draw the card itself. And then we need to draw all the cards that have images on them, right? So we need, when we see a card, it's either going to be on it, looking at its back side or its front side. And the back side is going to always be the same. And the front side is going to have different images inside of it. So let's make the back side first, because that's the easiest one to do. So I think that we need a vector, and we're just going to be card back here. And I think this should be 100 pixels by 100 pixels. So let's make just a square that is 100 pixels by 100 pixels. And it's hard to tell what 100 by 100 is, isn't it?
Yes.
So that is very hard to tell. But there is a trick that we can do, is if you look up here in this little corner where the background is selected, it's telling you it's 167 by 136. So we can just keep kind of working with it until it becomes 100 by 100.
It's way too small.
So that's 108. Oops, too much. 96, 99, 101. So hard. You know what? When we're having troubles like this, it's time to zoom in. And we have a little bit better control. 100, right? And we want this to be 100. A little bit more. 98, 100.
Perfect.
Now we're at 100. And the other thing that we need to make sure we're doing just right is to keep track of where that little crosshair goes.
Because that's the center of...
So there's a tool for that. That is the center. That's where when you say put me at X, Y, whatever, 100, 100, the place it's going to put is where that little crosshair is. And I kind of want this to be at one of the corners. It's just a little bit easier for me to keep track of that way. So... You know, this would be a lot easier if this guy wasn't white.
You need the fill
But he is
tool.
white, isn't he?
Use the fill.
We need one that's maybe filled black. But now he's black with a white outline.
And you can dye that white outline.
Or we can fill that. Like
Okay.
that. Perfect. Good suggestion. Fluffy Wishes knows what she's doing. All right. Now what do we want to put on the inside here? That's kind of boring. Should we fill it up with something?
Yeah.
What should it look like?
Well, so far we kind of have that red flowers, orange buttons, sort of like warm color code, color whatchamacallit, palette, whatever it's called. And I think we should sort of keep with that theme because it'd be
Okay.
weird if you had like a red title screen and then all of a sudden everything turned to like blue, icy.
Okay, so should we put a picture on the back of here, or should we just draw in a color? Or
I think we should just draw in a color because the pictures are going to be on the other side.
All right. So if we put another square in here,
Or you could just dye it red.
well, and we make this the inside color or something like that. And we need some sort of color in there. Now that looks okay. Would you improve it?
I think, can we try a lighter red just to see how it looks?
Lighter red?
No, I like it better with the darker red. That's just fine. That's too dark of a red.
Too dark?
You just, yeah,
Just
there you
leave it
go.
like that. You know what? We can always change this later, can't we?
All right.
All right. But the important thing is that we have a square here that is 100 by 100. And we can change the size later, but it's a lot easier to change the size if it starts out 100 by 100 because math is easier that way. I want to make sure we call this the card sprite so that I know what we're doing. And this is where the more fun part gets, as we're going to start making some cards. So the card front, and we probably won't use card front too much, but we just want to make one that is just completely white. Let's go ahead and get rid of these guys. Oops. We do want that. We just want him to be white. Right? There's our card front, and I think I moved it. We do want it to stay on that crosshair, just like that. And we'll start making duplicates of this to do our various match cards. So let's duplicate that. Now this is the more fun part. Let's start adding. Let's start adding in. We don't want a new one. We just want to add.
That's making a new one.
Fruits? Do we want animals?
We could have a variety of random things, I suppose.
Well, what do you like? Yeah, here's a lot of things. What looks nice? We have those flowers out front. Should we pick something naturey?
All right.
I like the snowflake.
Snowflakes are cool.
So we have that snowflake.
Giant snowflake.
Now we've got a snowflake in here. Now obviously he's too big because we need to make sure he fits inside of that square. But that's pretty easy to do. There we go. We've got one. That's our first card. Hey there, Fluffy Wishes. It's our very first card. What do you think?
I think, yay.
All right.
It's great.
So this is our snowflake card. And we don't actually need that one. So now we're going to have another one. Let's pick another card. What other things should we have in here? Let's stick with the nature theme.
How about a
Do
butterfly?
you like the butterfly? Which of these butterflies do you like the most?
How about that colorful butterfly?
3?
Yes, butterfly 3.
Let's go with butterfly 3. And we'll copy butterfly 3 and stick butterfly 3 right here now. It's almost the right size, but just a little too big. So let's dial him down just a little bit. Put him in the center of our card. And then we don't need this guy anymore. We've got butterfly. And we're just going to do this over and over again, and we'll pick out a bunch of these. But we've used up our time for now. Obviously, if you're following along, you can make whatever cards you want. Make them look however you like. Make your background on your card express the things that you like it to. Make the images on the cards be exactly what you want as well. You don't need to make 2 of each. We'll do that in our code later on. What do you think so far, hey, there?
Our game is coming along great.
Yep, we've got both of our screens now, and we know what we're doing with making our tiles and our cards. It's just going to take a little bit of time for us to get all of them. Now, how many do we need?
We need,
Our biggest game is 6 times 5.
that is 15 different
15 images,
pairs.
because it's 30 tiles and 15 images. We'll get to finishing that up in the next time. All right, thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.